So we were talking about the power of your upcoming book and who you hope you'd like to see use it and what they could get out of it. I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
Sure. One of the audiences that I think really could benefit from it would be journalists, for example, that in part for inclusion in the stories to be able to illustrate complex issues for their readers, but equally important as an analytical tool, particularly when you're dealing now that our frame of reference has suddenly changed to trillions of dollars on economic issues. How do you get your hands around that kind of thing? Well, one of the best ways of doing it is through data visualization and free-flowing access to this. And I really think that journalists need to be demanding access, as taxpayers do and everybody else at this point, demanding access to real-time structured data about the stimulus package and the second phase of the TARP program. And I'm convinced that we have the opportunity not only to hold government accountable in this case, but also because, yes, the appropriations part of it is going to be taken care of this week, but the devil's in the details in terms of how it will actually be spent. For example, there's a wonderful site now just started, I think last week or this week, called stimuluswatch.org, where they're doing crowdsourcing and they're asking the public in all of the states to look at projects that are hypothetically shovel-ready and analyze them from their perspective as somebody on the ground in those home communities about whether that's going to be money well spent and how to do it. And I said in my talk tonight that in a situation, I'm always a Pollyanna, I must admit, about situations like this, but I do really believe very much so in the Chinese principle of Weiji, the ideogram that combines danger, which we're all well aware of, that's one for crisis that combines the one for danger, which we all see right now, but also opportunity for radical change. And I think part of what's happened now is a total loss of faith, not only in government and business, but also in past ways of doing things. And I think that offers a tremendous opportunity for people who understand Web 2.0 technologies and principles of change and collaboration to be able to craft not just effective programs to help us deal with this terrible impact, but to fundamentally change the way we live after the crisis is over.
So the law was changed, as I understand it, at the beginning of this year. The SEC filings had to be in the business version of XML,
right?
Which I think you mentioned in your upcoming book.
Right.
Which isn't out yet, but I've still got to read it. I'm very happy about that. My question is, do you think that if organizations like the Sunlight Foundation and the tools behind Stimulus Watch and all had been in place, and this law was, say, in place 2 years ago, that we might be able to have prevented some or all of what we're currently going through?
I do, but far more important, there's a professor at Bryant University in Rhode Island who's one of the foremost experts on XBRL, who says that had it been in place at that point, not only could we have found it quicker, but there's a very real chance that those terrible loans would never have been made in the first place. That you would have had scrutiny and access to the data, so we might well have totally avoided the whole thing. And well, that's verging on criminal in my book. And to see what's happening in the Netherlands, and with this radical shift. Now, unfortunately, only a relatively small number of corporations have actually taken advantage of the opportunity. So, and I have to think it may have something to do with preconceptions about regulations and reporting. If it has something to do with mandatory reporting, it must be bad. Well, in reality, this is fantastic. And I would argue, I'm a cheap Scots and living in New England. I'm terminally cheap, so I've tried to take a very serious genetic problem and turn it into an advantage. And that is that if I have to do something for somebody, I'm always trying to figure out how I can amortize that cost and effort by using it in some other way. So if those publicly traded companies are going to have to file reports with the SEC using structured data, so the way I visualize it right now is Senator Stephenson, now that he's unemployed, is being hired to polish the inside of those internet tubes. And, you know, you do those reports with structured data and shoot them right out of the building to the SEC. Well, the problem is that data could be equally valuable within your operation as well. So part of the big challenge now is how to use the structured data internally to empower your employees with what they need, externally for reporting to the SEC for transparency, and also this marvelous phenomenon of crowdsourcing as with the District of Columbia.